Okay. It's still you, Josh. You get
Yep.
take number two.
All right. Sinead O'Connor, I Do Not Want What I Haven't Got. Released March 12th, 1990. In the opening montage, you heard Nothing Compares to You. And now you're going to hear Emperor's New Clothes.
What treated you mean? I really didn't mean to. You know how it is and how a pregnancy can change you. See plenty of clothes that I like, but I won't go anywhere nice for a while. All I want.
All right, Matt, what are the stats on this one?
So Sinead O'Connor's I Do Not Want What I Haven't Got comes in at number 229 in the 1990s on Best Ever Albums, number 17 in 1990, number 1,225 of all time. It is Sinead O'Connor's highest rated album. This album did come in on Rolling Stone's list at number 457, and Sinead O'Connor is ranked number 575 of overall artist rankings on Best Ever Albums.
All right. Sinead, she was born Sinead Marie Bernadette O'Connor. December 8th, 1966. She died this year, July 26th, at the age of 56. Cause of death was not disclosed. She was born in Dublin, Ireland. We covered her last season with her debut album, The Lion and the Cobra. I did a full bio there, so go ahead and listen to that if you want some more info. This is her follow-up album. She is classified as alternative rock, pop, folk rock, rock and roll. She released 10 total albums in her career. She has named, on her debut album, she named Bob Dylan, David Bowie, Bob Marley, Susie and the Banshees, and the Pretenders as artists who influenced her on her debut. Prince and the Pogues have also been cited as influences. Shirley Manson of Garbage has cited Sinead O'Connor as an influence on her. Similar artists would be people like Alanis Morissette, Fiona Apple, PJ Harvey, Liz Phair, Tori Amos, and maybe modern comparisons would be like Miley Cyrus and Tegan and Sarah. Nothing Compares to You that is the highest charting single. It reached number one April 21st, 1990, and this is her highest charting album as well. It spent 6 weeks at number one. It won the MTV Music Video of the Year, as well as the Best Female Video and Best Postmodern Video, whatever that means. Nominated for Grammy Record of the Year, but lost to Another Day in Paradise, ironically enough, and won for Best Grammy for Best Alternative Music Performance. 3 fun facts. Nothing Compares to You was written by Prince and originally released as by him as a side project for his funk group, The Family. No stranger to controversy or making political statements, she appeared on SNL October 3rd, 1992, and performed an a cappella version of Bob Marley's War, which is quite impressive if you go watch it, and then ripped up a picture of Pope John Paul II in protest to the Catholic Church. And she released a memoir called Rememberings in June of 2021, and she converted to Islam in 2018, and she adopted the name Shahuda Sadahak while still performing under the name Sinead O'Connor. All right, we know what we thought. We all thought highly of the first debut album. So what did you think of I Do Not Want What I Haven't Got?
Well, I think very highly of this one too, guys. This is another excellent. It's funny all the artists you mentioned, Josh, because with the exception of maybe Tori Amos, in terms of I don't think of her being similar to any of those people. I think the more we listen to Sinead O'Connor, the more I realize that she's a lot more singular than she is, who is she? And I think I always knew that, but as we listen to both these albums, I'm like, she is not one that I put in, oh, she's from this direct lineage of this and that, because there's songs on this album where she sounds in the tradition of Bob Dylan. There's songs on this that sound like, proto trip hop. There's songs on this that are straight ahead, ballads. She's all over, you know what I mean? Yep. It's I almost don't want to do that because each song has its own thing. The lyrics on this album are fantastic as well. A lot of it is about relationships, and she always comes from sort of like a deep thinking place where she's processing it, but in the emotional lens. I love the lyrics on Last Day of Our Acquaintance, where she says, I will meet you later in somebody's office. I'll talk, but you won't listen to me. Kind of, I know your answer already, and you can sort of project whatever office that is, right? Are they passing, in a work environment after the relationship is ended and they're in a different context? Is it like a lawyer's office? Is it a police station? You have no idea, but that ambiguity along with the directness was really cool in terms of stuff like that. I love that she uses provocative titles. In that sense, I think she's similar to someone who sort of said what I said about her this year when she passed away, which was Morrissey. I actually think they share quite a bit in common. Something that I don't know if I would have put together until you think about it. And then you're like, well, of course they do. Like, because his solo career and hers are all about, genre shifting. They're traditionalists in some way, but they're also iconoclasts in other ways. They're not afraid to be unpopular. They sing in very distinctive ways that stand out. They inspire strong feelings one way or the other, right? So I think as much as I'm going to compare her to someone, if you need a comparative reference, I'd probably say Morrissey, a Irish English man as opposed to just an Irish man, would probably be the best fit. Although she does not have sort of the ambiguity that, Morrissey has. She is, clearly writing about, relationships in a heterosexual sense. Not hitting you over the head with it, but that's kind of where she's coming from.
She doesn't have quite the turn of phrase that he does too at times on some of his songs.
No, I think by design though. She's got the turn of phrase, but she doesn't want to be cheeky. You know what I mean?
Right. She's very sincere and serious.
She wants to bring the intensity in all, and that's what I really appreciate about her songs. There's a bubbling intensity that gives these an edge or a danger to them, but not a danger like that it's going to harm you. It's almost voyeuristic at times, and she's like an inferno that that's why it's almost like she couldn't sustain it, right? Because in both of these albums you can hear the underlying tension in all of these songs. And unlike someone like, say, Natalie Merchant, who also writes a lot of cause songs or songs about relationships, she can, and I love 10,000 Meanings. I love Natalie Merchant, but the argument about her is that can be sloganeering at times and stuff like that. No one would ever say that about Sinead O'Connor, right? Like she's too, that intensity underpining, it just gives too much distance for it to sound fake or insincere. I don't think anyone would ever say Sinead O'Connor is not sincere in what she believes. And I think that the lyrics and the intensity drive it, but also her musical choices, the structure and the composition of her songs, the fact that some of them go long and some of them are more traditional pop songs. And I love the fact that, much like On the Line in the Cobra, she keeps you off balance in a good way. You're not quite sure, is the next song going to be dirge-like and slow? Is it going to be a borderline dance song? Is it going to be atmospheric and moody? And there isn't a direct rhythm to the album, which I enjoy. I love the fact that you don't get entirely comfortable on the album, and as you're listening, you're kind of like, where's it going next? So this is a thumbs up for me. I really enjoyed this album. I don't know if I would draw a distinction between this and Lion and the Cobra. Lion and the Cobra is a little bit more upbeat, a little bit more of the 80s dancey. This one is a little bit more straight ahead. It's slower at times. I think it requires more patience than Lion and the Cobra did, but that's patience to me is not a negative thing, especially if an album deserves the patience, and this one does. So, thumbs up for me for sure, guys.
Yeah, sign me up for more Sinead O'Connor. It's someone going into this that I just only knew, Nothing Compares to You, and that song came out, 1990. I was 12. I remember the video. I remember it being played all the time. I was fine with the song, but it wasn't where I was at musically, so it didn't really resonate
or
with
life
me.
experience.
or just like the sound of it, it's like this really melancholy kind of thing. And I don't know, my palate wasn't mature enough to really be like, oh, that's a great song. I was it was more of just like, whatever, I'm going to go listen to more Nelson,
In fairness, I didn't think she wrote it for a 12-year-old, and nor should she.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right.
So
she didn't write
you.
for anybody or Prince but it wasn't, I didn't care about it that really, and she always just kind of stayed in that lane as being like, and I grew to like the song later on, but never enough to want to venture out. But she's just, yeah, man, all the stuff that you guys are saying, between the Lion and the Cobra in this record, yeah, the variety of the sounds that she's going for, the different moods, and just, yeah, keeping you on your toes. I do think that this is, I would agree with you, John. I think this is a little bit more straight ahead than the Lion and the Cobra. I probably like the Lion and the Cobra more, though. I thought that was a little bit more adventurous. It was a little bit more
Arty, for sure.
yeah, a little bit more, maybe a little bit more unique and maybe more interesting. Not that this is not an interesting record, it certainly is. But I think, like you said, it's more straightforward. It doesn't take. Maybe it takes more patience to get into it because it's a slower burn. Whereas there were some things that happened right off the bat with some of the songs on the Lion and the Cobra. I was like, oh, I was drawn in, where this is kind of like, I didn't really feel that as much. I think I felt that way with I Am Stretched on Your Grave. I was like, whoa, like that was a cool, like a great beat. It looks like it's a loop from a James Brown song, which I thought was kind of that makes sense, right? It's got this really great funk groove, and of course it comes from James Brown. And then they throw the violin, kind of the fiddle thing at the end there. They do like that reel or whatever, and I'm like, oh, like different level, like that's probably my favorite song on this, at least after a couple of listens. But yeah, there's nothing bad on here really. There's nothing that's not interesting. I like her voice. I like, I'm even paying attention to some of the lyrics. She's the black boys on mopeds. She's calling out Margaret Thatcher.
Yep.
And,
very political.
And so it's not just all relationships. There's a political edge to her as well, lyrically on some of these songs. And there's some straight ahead stuff like Emperor's New Clothes and Jump in the River, or, more a little bit more straight ahead rock songs. So you've got that, but there's some really pretty ballads on here. The orchestration's really nice. Three Babies is kind of like an Enya song, the way that it's the atmosphere and the aura of that song and the production behind it has a kind of a very, it's kind of almost like painting a landscape, in some ways. So yeah, she's just, I'm kind of blown away. She's way more impressive musically than I thought that she was. I don't know what I would have expected to hear going into these two albums, but these certainly wasn't it. And she kept me on her toes, and really good music, variety, and yeah, thumbs up. She's great.
Would you say this is one of the fun things about doing this podcast, Matt,
Absolutely.
that you would have never found out that
Nope.
without, yeah.
Yep, for sure. Talking Heads, like certain things, there's like, yeah, whatever, and then you're like, whoa, I should have. Kate Bush, just absolutely. This is the best reason to do this.
Yeah, knowing her for Nothing Compares to You, and then like the SNL thing, like that's a huge reason, discovering her music and
that's what she kind of got painted as a
so much more
postscript,
than
which
that.
Yeah, this album was very impressive to me. She has such an intensity to her that she brings to the album. This album is very confessional. It's very contemplative. I feel like Matt, you brought up a good point about it kind of being a slow build on this album, but like you both said, there's so many every track is very different. The power of her voice continues to impress me, and kind of her range and how she can use it as an instrument. Some songs on here are just, well, one, like the last track is just a cappella, her singing, and that is like enough to keep your interest. But then other times it's just like her and an acoustic guitar, and it's not even like a complex acoustic guitar. It's more like a beat more than anything else, and she is able to create a whole song and kind of win me over, not even win me over, but just like draw me in a way that other artists have not been able to do. I do like that she's able to, she's able to transition through so many different genres, or take aspects of, she's able to create pop songs like Emperor's New Clothes and Nothing Compares to You, or Jump in the River, like you said, that are more straightforward, kind of accessible songs. But then she's also able to do something like Black Boys on Mopeds, which is like clearly political, but it's also just her singing with an acoustic guitar, or somebody.
And it's kind of like, it's amazing too, because I wrote down like what each of these songs is like as touch points, and
Yeah.
I wrote a different artist for, like, I was like, that's kind of her PJ Harvey song, and like Three Babies is her Joni Mitchell song, you know, and this song sort of sounds like Trip Hop Portishead, and then
Yep.
this one's like a Prince song because he wrote it, and this one's a David Bowie song. So it's kind of amazing that she, and so in that sense she's like nobody because she's all these things, right?
Yeah.
Right.
So
And the first track is, it doesn't, it sets the tone in some way because it's like a slow build up with her singing, but then it becomes this like huge orchestral piece with like strings and everything. And that is not what the rest of the album is like. So it's kind of like a false sense of what it could be. And from song to song, I just really appreciate how different everything is. And, the fact that Prince wrote Nothing Compares to You, she sings it and delivers it in a way that Prince never could. And it's such, I don't know, I just see that song or hear that song with fresh ears, kind of knowing who she is and just, I don't know, paying attention more. But it's just, it is kind of a ultimate representation of who she is as an artist in some ways. But it's also, I don't know, she is just very singular, and there's very few artists on the podcast that we've talked about that I feel this way about, that there's like kind of are very special and outside of like the Beatles, obviously they're influential and stuff like that, but somebody that's so kind of singular and of themselves but so talented and able to do something that no one else has been able to do. There's not many people like that we've talked about.
Who I thought of, and probably it's gonna be a little bit more controversial with you guys because I was a bigger fan than you guys were, but if one of her spirit animals is Morrissey, I'd say another one, even though they don't sound exactly alike, is like Joni Mitchell. I think is another the confessional nature, the shifting genres, the sort of singularity of her voice and what she's doing. I do think, while you wouldn't draw a direct correlation necessarily at times, I do think she's probably, and we all know how influential Joni Mitchell is. I know we cannot maybe love her stuff. Like I said, I think I liked it more than you guys did, but also realize that when so many people name check you, right? Like it's kind of like,
Oh, sure.
You have to, and I think that type of singularity that people ascribe to Joni Mitchell, and I heard as we went through the 70s, I got Joni Mitchell more and more the more we listened. And I think if I went back and re-listened to those albums, I'd probably get her even better than I did because I have more knowledge now, right, to kind of know where she fits in. But that would be another person I would say is similar.
But yeah, this is an excellent follow-up to her debut album. This is my album of the week, and she's 2 for 2 so far.
Okay, any final thoughts? Yeah, go listen. If you only know Sinead O'Connor from that narrative that became very easy to do, like, SNL, Iconoclast, Sad Life, right? Nothing Compares to You, end of book, right? Like, I knew there was more because, unlike you guys, I knew Lion the Cobra a little bit better. I didn't know this one as much, so the fact that there's this level of depth caught me off guard a little bit too. But boy, I'm even just getting beyond the tragedy. I think there's few artists, if you're not familiar with them, that might surprise you more or deserve a reappraisal more than she does. So, and if you want something that'll kind of bring a smile to your face, someone who I'll spill a lot of verbal, the equivalent of ink, but verbal praise for down the road, Fiona Apple. There is a clip of her online where she's in her room and she just pulls up Sinead O'Connor singing Mandinka and just is singing at the top of her lungs. And, Fiona Apple at times, right, can also have the idea of being serious and intense and stuff. And there's like a child, glee, and at the end she just basically curses and says fuck yeah, you know what I mean, it's like someone finding a spirit animal, you know what I mean, and it's a really cool clip if you get a chance to watch it. It's the definition of fanboying, right, in that, but in the best ways possible. So yeah
Nice. Yeah, good pull. I haven't seen that clip.
Yeah, check it out. I think you'll smile.